hormone supplementation is required to reach normal levels just 50 years ago?
Yeah, so this is a interesting one because, of course, a lot of people are scared of hormone supplementation because of probably indoctrination from the medical community that that's, a very dangerous thing. And admittedly, it can be. There are certain hormones that if you take them willingly, you're going to cause serious problems. The most commonly known one, of course, being steroids, which a lot of men abuse for various reasons that create serious issues for themselves, serious health consequences, often premature aging and death. So being a bit wary about hormone supplementation absolutely is valid, but feeling like it's fundamentally anathema. So one group of people who tends to be against it are the people who are, as I said, mainstream medicine kind of followers. But another group is the kind of natural health people. A lot of them are against it because they want to do it naturally. And so one of the arguments against that, I would say, is that, and it's something in a quote we included in a previous section about thyroid, that until recently, we were probably all getting a bit of thyroid supplementation in our diet because we all, with very few exceptions, very few cultures, the vast majority of our ancestors were eating animal foods. We're often eating the whole animal. And so we would get some thyroid hormone from eating the whole animal. Now, if that's true for thyroid, it's probably also true for progesterone. It's probably true for testicles. There's a whole thing about like eating testicles. That in the carnivore community recently and taking testicle glandular supplement. It's probably true for some of the adrenal chemicals like cortisol, like aldosterone. And so it's probably even true for insulin, although I don't know, the pancreas, people would consume the pancreas. So maybe to some degree, it's definitely true for some of the thymus hormones. People, the thymus gland was certainly very prized. And so this idea that hormone supplementation is a new thing in the last few decades or 100 years that our ancestors never used to do is probably nonsense. It's probably actually something that we did a lot, but with various degrees of awareness, right? Maybe in some cultures there was this person's sick, let's give them thymus gland. Oh, this person, seems to be wasting away, let's give them thyroid. Maybe there was that kind of level of understanding, but maybe it was just a lot of tradition and just do it without an understanding of exactly why they were doing it. We don't really know. But yeah, so this idea that, first of all, it's not natural and has never been done before, I think is not true. Second of all, but I think the other aspect, because, the quote says normal hormone levels just 50 years ago. So I think that's probably referring to testosterone more than anything. And so the reason why, but I think it's also true for thyroid, it's also true for progesterone, it may well be true for DHEA, it may well be true for Pregnenlone. Why? I think the short answer to that is toxicity. So an example of that, as I say, the most famous one is testosterone. So why is testosterone so low? Well, one of the reasons might be of all the estrogens. The phytoestrogens, the xenoestrogens, the estrogens in the water, the estrogens in the plastic, the estrogens in the food. And so this is antagonistic to testosterone. And so this can shift us into an estrogenic state rather than a testosterone state. And that's why a person may benefit from adding in extra testosterone, because it balances out that excess of estrogen. That's also why a person could benefit from adding progesterone, because it could balance out that extra estrogen. Well, estrogen is not the only toxin. And so this could be a huge thing that I won't get into right now, but there are all kinds of toxins that profoundly mess with and damage and reduce optimal levels of all kinds of hormones. Polyunsaturated fatty acids, large amounts of seed oil, and its effect on thyroid hormone is another one that we used recently in a different section as an example of that. So one of the hormones that Dr. P focused on a lot, which is not generally focused on by many people other than his audience as much. So testosterone is big, estrogen and progesterone are pretty big as well as bioidentical hormones. But what about the mother of all hormones? Well, at least all the adrenal and sex hormones, the steroid hormones as they're called, and that's pregnenolone. And so pregnenolone is the master hormone that all the other hormones are made out of. And Dr. Peat had some very interesting things to say about Pregnenlone.
And Dr. Peat says, in the early 1950s, there were studies showing that Pregnenlone is much better than cortisone or cortisol for the uses those have, anti-inflammatory and so on. But its role in the system makes it even better than progesterone. Progesterone cures essentially everything, trauma, all of the degenerative and stress-related diseases.
Okay, so that is a hell of a claim, or several claims there. So first of all, the fact that Pregnenlone is actually better as an anti-inflammatory than cortisol or cortisone, right? Which is still widely used for that purpose up until this day. When we say that people are using steroid anti-inflammatories, that's actually what we're talking about. In fact, it's so common that, of course, the other type of anti-inflammatories are called NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, to distinguish them. So the fact that Pregnenlone could work better than cortisol is quite a big thing, given that very high doses of Pregnenlone seem to be much, much, much safer than very high doses of cortisol. So that's interesting. But probably the most interesting claim that he makes there is that progesterone cures essentially everything. All of the degenerative and stress-related diseases. Well, that's pretty much all of the ones that people suffer from these days. So that is a hell of a claim. But yeah, I'll let you carry on the quote, but I just wanted to highlight, if that's true, interesting the implications that might have. And again, this is not something that he, was a casual enthusiast of. This is one of the main things that he studied and taught about, progesterone and Pregnenlone.
It's definitely worth looking into deeper, for sure. Yes, he carries on to say, and it's hormonally more powerful than Pregnenlone. But Pregnenlone has the same position in the system. When you take other hormones, the body's production of that hormone decreases. But in the case of progesterone and Pregnenlone, those substances support the body's production of more up to their ability to make more.
So this is another really important distinction, because one of the other reasons why it's very strongly discouraged generally that people take hormone supplementation is because of the danger of downregulation of your own body's production. So that's one of the issues with testosterone. You start taking testosterone, your body stops making its own testosterone. Your testicles shrink, you stop producing sperm. If you stop taking the testosterone, it's hard to get your body to start making its own again. It's a whole thing. That's why testosterone is also sold as a prescription drug that has to be supervised by a medical doctor. Now, at least in the US, both Pregnenlone and progesterone are not sold as a prescription drug. And I believe this is the main reason why, because it's completely safe to take them in the sense that your body's not going to downregulate its own production, and also in the sense that it's pretty difficult to overdose on them. Testosterone is also something you can very easily overdose on. Hell, even thyroid, which we talked about before, is something you could actually very easily overdose on, and that's why I always do advise the medical supervision. But yeah, Pregnenlone, progesterone. So just to take those two statements on face value for a second. So first of all, we said cures essentially everything. Then we said basically completely safe. No harm in overdoing it, no harm in your body forgetting how to make its own. And in fact, the opposite, he says that when you add them in, it actually helps your body to make its own in future.
Yeah, no, this is really, really interesting. So I'll carry on with what he said. So if you're deficient in progesterone, sometimes a single dose or two can activate your body to return to normal production if you have the thyroid and cholesterol needed. And to a degree, the same situation with Pregnenlone. It stabilizes the damaged mitochondria and makes it possible for your cells to organize energy production and more Pregnenlone and progesterone production.
Yeah, so the same thing again. He's saying that when you take these things, it helps your body make its own, but also it's saying it helps your body to make that ATP, which again, this is the key theme that runs through Ray Peat's work, is support the metabolism. What does that mean? Support your body being able to make more ATP, more energy from the fuel that you give it. So that's another reason why he was a big fan of these two molecules.
It carries on. And the drug companies first realized that the progesterone and DHEA were terrible drugs because they tend to cure diseases.
Again, a hell of a claim. And again, something that there's a lot of scientific data to back up. I really recommend, Googling Ray Peat progesterone, Googling Ray Peat DHEA, reading some of his books, maybe reading some of the other books by people who, are a part of his body of knowledge, as it were. and investigating the possibility that these things might be true, that these hormones that are already in your body, if you give your body a bit more, it will start making even more of its own, and that those hormones will provide a lot of benefit to every system of your body.
Definitely worth looking at. It carries on, and the effects of pregnenolone. There are no recognized hormonal effects, but if you have enough of it in experiments, a rat, for example, would be given 10 grams per rat per dose of pregnenolone alone with no harmful effects except to stop stress hormone production. And so pregnenolone is a relatively expensive material if you supplement it adequately.
Yeah, and so what he's saying about that is, so 10 grams of pregnenolone per rat. So the pregnenolone supplements usually come in like 25, 50, 100 milligrams maybe. So the point that he was making is that as a human, you can take so much pregnenolone. So even though it's a very cheap supplement, if you were taking, I don't know what the equivalent of a rat to human would be in this case, but if you were taking like a kilo a day of pregnenolone, that would still end up being quite expensive. Now, I'm not saying you should. No one's saying you should. Please don't do that. But the point is that based on the rat models, it may even be potentially safe to. That's how much you can have, and it be absolutely fine. I would not do that. I would be very careful with, any hormone, despite what we said about the safety and all the rest of it, because you never know how your body's going to respond to it with whatever imbalances it's already got going on. But it's just interesting that from a medical point of view, you could give a vast amount like they did to rats, and you would probably be fine. But don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that. He carries on. And since it isn't patentable, those 3 steroids are something that it's just a matter of the cost of producing them and marketing them. They could essentially cure most of the current diseases if they were made available massively and cheaply. But that doesn't interest the drug companies because they don't have patents.
So there we're getting a bit conspiratorial, right? But there is a lot of evidence to support this perspective. And again, I don't encourage anyone to believe us or believe Ray Peat, but just look up the benefits that these things have. There is some misinformation in this regard, like progesterone. If you look up progesterone, you'll see like a lot of negative things attributed to it, but it seems like most of the negative things that are attributed to progesterone are actually relating to synthetic progesterone, which is not the same. So when you're looking up all of these things, especially progesterone, you want to look at the bioidentical form. That's not always made clear in the studies. It is almost tempting to get a little bit conspiratorial when you look into this. He's right that it's literally the cure of most of the current diseases, and that the only reason that it's not used is because it's so cheap and not patentable. I'll leave that up to you to decide. Hey, I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Rejuvenate podcast. If you want to watch the full episode that came from, just click on the link above. Or if you just want to watch our latest video, then click the link below. And make sure that you subscribe to the channel and like the video. Thank you.